God, don't do that. What the fuck are you doing? Get away from my car.
This is a classic example of why it is important for parents to let their boys know that it's okay to like boys, even if you also like girls. Because if you don't let them know it's okay to dry hump another dude, they will potentially try and dry hump car mirrors, even if it has to be under the cover of racism. Also, you've done a pretty shitty job with your kid if he thinks that racism is a good way to cover up sexual frustration. Yeah, these three guys, Reddit says they're hockey players. I'm not going to do a deep dive and I don't want to dox anybody, but I do want to talk about it. These idiots have already received more than enough hate to either make them realize that they need to stop being huge shitheads or they're going to run for conservative political office. Who knows? Now, a lot of people will look at this behavior in this video where these three guys harass, I believe it's an Indian couple, and they'll just chalk it up to racism and poor impulse control and more racism, as well as poor examples set by their parents and their community. And that's all a factor. And sure, it's not uncommon for racism to mix its way into someone's sexual drive, causing this sort of acting out. But I have another take because I went to Bible college and I lived in dorm. What I believe, I can't prove, but I strongly suspect, is some of or all of these young men are bisexual and not dealing with it well. You see, while queer acceptance has spread pretty far in some circles, to the point where so many of my female friends who are married to men have felt more than comfortable telling me in private, you know, I think I could have been just as happy with a woman. The stigma around bisexuality in women, at least in progressive spaces, is pretty low compared to how it used to be. For men, though, generally the only time that I end up finding out that any of my guy friends are bisexual is after knowing them for years, and often because they get really tired of me saying, well, as a gay guy, I know this. And then eventually they just get so fed up and they're like, I'm actually bi. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then we talk about cute boys. It's pretty rare that I meet a guy in day to day life who is just openly bisexual because they get so much stigmatization from straight women, straight men, and from the gays. It's odd, but for some reason, for so many people, as soon as they find out that a man is bisexual, him being honest about that causes them to think he's somehow inherently untrustworthy. So, bisexual guys often stay in the closet for their entire lives, or at least 20 to 40 years into a marriage. And the lack of acceptance often means that these guys can only explore that part of who they are when they're acting out. For them, heteronormative behavior is seen as being a good boy, whereas bro jobs are naughty. These three, they're being naughty. And none of this should be seen as excusing their poor behavior. They're being racist and they're being sexually aggressive towards people who are clearly not into it. Nothing that I see here should be taken as me suggesting that this is okay. This is unhealthy behavior, but I'm wanting to talk about what is often the root of that. The thing is, though, like, ask yourself, these guys aren't fugly. Like, they may not be your type or whatever, but like, they should not have any trouble getting laid.
Yeah.
What you do with the plates, you retard?
Can you call 911?
What's going on?
There is no way that you can tell me that there are zero women in Peterborough who have, not a lot of respect for themselves. Thing is, when I was in Bible college, there was this guy, we'll call him David, after the most obvious bisexual guy in the Bible. Anyway, David was a good looking guy. Not the best looking guy, but like, I wouldn't kick him out of my guilty thoughts before bed. He used to think that it was hilarious to squat down and hump my leg like a dog. It didn't happen a lot, and I wasn't necessarily like into it, but, people laughed and it didn't bother me or anything like that. Like, I wasn't a victim. I could have made it stop, and I never felt like my autonomy was being compromised or anything like that. If anything, I kind of laughed along with it. So, like, nobody, please don't go thinking that he was like assaulting me. It was fine. I could have made it stop, and I'm sure if he would have gotten a sense that I was truly uncomfortable with it, he would have stopped. Looking back, though, I don't think that David was comfortable just coming out and saying, hey, I want to hump more than your leg. The thing is, both David and I were victims of society. Back then, mainstream depictions of queer relationships were still pretty rare and generally limited to movies that came over from Europe and got shown on Showcase on Monday nights. Honestly, back then, gay characters always needed to be the punchline, and while things may have gotten better, they're still not nearly as good as conservatives like to pretend they are when they complain about them. I suspect this whole weird interaction is indirect flirting between these three guys, and unfortunately, they're using the people that they're harassing as an object to bond over terrorizing. Honestly, you see the same unspoken sort of toxic same-sex attraction in groups of women where they will reward each other for attacking an agreed upon target because their own internalized homophobia prevents them from just complimenting each other and saying, I think you're pretty, girl, unless they're being a dick to somebody. And no, this is not projection. Hostility does not make this chicken go cock-a-doodle-doo. But I spent years in Bible college dorm, and the guys who loved finding excuses to get naked and like to cuddle and grind and do all sorts of thrusty behavior totally is a joke. Stories would often come out about them, and you may be thinking that that's just gossip and everyone gossips. No, Bible college boys do not gossip about that sort of thing. It's kind of funny, but in Bible college, the boys actually, I think, thought of the idea of outing someone as probably one of the worst things that you could do to someone. They weren't necessarily pro-gay, but they saw the act of branding someone as gay as so cruel, they could only bring themselves to acknowledge what they'd seen, but never draw any conclusions about why those two really good friends were caught in a single shower soaping each other up. It probably explains how I managed to stay in the closet for so long despite being pretty obviously gay. So yeah, again, heaps of empathy for the people that these guys were bothering, and the guys in the video should really go fuck themselves, or each other. They're awful, but I hope you'll also consider that there's a good chance that they're being awful because as a society, we have not done enough work to normalize the idea that each of them could turn to the other and just say, bro, I may not want to marry you, but I steal glances in the locker room, and I hope you do too. Until then, guys, remember, if you want to get these sorts of feelings out, you can just ask each other, want to wrestle? If you can't manage to get out, do you like me?